Hello, my name is Christopher McCall. Today I'm going to be teaching about short and long reflexes. Short and Long Reflexes by Chris McCall. So this is part of the digestive system. These short reflexes happen within the digestive tract. They are in the stomach and in the small intestine, and as well as the large intestine. The short reflexes have a nerve plexus within the gut wall that act as the little brain or the cerebrum. They act as the go-to for the reflexes. This allows the reflex to begin. If a reflex starts in the enteric nervous system, or the ENS, and is carried out without outside input, these are called short reflexes. So if the GI tract expands or contracts, the enteric nervous system will take that and run with it, and they will do the cycle of a short reflex. The lumen of the GI tract signals the submucosal plexus, that is the plexus that I was talking about that is in the gut wall, that acts as the little brain, and it causes changes in GI motility and the release of bile and pancreatic secretions. So if the GI wall expands, the GI tract knows that it is getting ready for more food, or it could be a signal that the GI tract needs to move stuff along. So it'll signal that the GI motility needs to be it needs to get going. There's no need for an outside input. This is all done within the gut wall. The outside input is saved for the long reflexes. They carry out an integral function without outside stimulus, so they, like I said before, they will secrete bile and pancreatic secretions to help digest food. They still signal secretory cells of small intestines in the stomach, so they will secrete these without any stimulation from smelling food or anything. These are just to get the GI tract moving. These are more like a autonomic system where they will do everything on their own without being told to do so. They carry out entirely within the gut wall, so they don't need any stimulation from any of the pancreas or the liver or even the brain. Next, we have the long reflexes. They work with the CNS, both in sending and receiving information. So they send sensory information to the CNS. They also will respond to GI distension. It's not just a short reflex. However, those short reflexes get everything going before the brain has to tell the GI tract to get moving. They receive input from the central nervous system. So this is where I was talking about. There are different responses that can trigger the GI motility and bile secretions, and even salivary secretions. Sensory inputs are more than just in the digestive system. They are seeing food, or smelling food, or even thinking about food. There are a lot of different things that cause these secretions to happen from the cephalic brain. Reflexes that originate outside of the ENS are called cephalic reflexes. So cephalic meaning head reflexes, or they originate in the brain. So sense of smell, sense of sight, these are all things that can stimulate the long reflexes. An interesting thing about long reflexes, they have a feed-forward reflex. These are reflexes that are stimulated by seeing or smelling food, or the sound of food, like bacon in on a griddle, or the thought of food, like even thinking about the lunch that you may have later will trigger some of these reflexes. as well as emotional reflexes. So butterflies in your stomach is actually a GI response to emotions. So as well as people who get anxious and vomit, it's another emotional response, but it is a response from outside of the GI tract and enteric nervous system, so it is considered a long reflex. So there's a couple things I'd like to compare and contrast about the long and short reflexes. The long reflexes are thought to be thought-driven reflexes. Most long and short reflexes end up in the same place. However, long reflexes take a different route. So GI motility, secretion of different bile and pancreatic secretions will happen in response to the both reflexes. However, the short reflex bypasses the brain. The long reflex invokes the brain in response. Short reflexes are local, so they don't use the brain to make any decisions. It's all a quick response to the internal environment of the GI tract. Short reflexes are quicker responses to gut actions directly. So again, this is the response to the motility needed, or the distension of the gut. There are different controlling factors as well. Long reflexes are under autonomic control, so these are going to originate from the brain or invoke the brain to make these decisions, where short reflexes are under GI stimulation. So again, the GI tract is stimulating these short reflexes to get everything going before these long reflexes can kick in. Here's just a table that shows a diagram that shows how these factors all lead to the same place. However, if you'll notice, the interneurons right here is only a small reflex, or a short reflex. So these short reflexes bypass the brain, whereas the long reflexes have to go up to the brain, and then they have to communicate with the enteric neurons. The short reflexes just go from the sensory receptors and neurons through the interneurons to the enteric neurons. They also will stimulate the secretory cells of the stomach and the small intestine. Now, the long reflexes actually have to take a much longer path to do so. The short reflexes do it almost the same time as these sensory receptors and neurons. They are already making GI peptides, and again, the long reflexes do so as well, but that is after they've already stimulated the secretory cells of the stomach and small intestine. So here's a little bit of review. Emotional responses in the gut are considered short reflexes. That one would actually be false. They're considered the long reflexes. Now, the long reflexes are the ones that have to go up to the brain or are received from the brain. So they are the ones that will trigger, like the butterflies in your stomach, or the vomiting as well. And then one of these do not happen in long reflexes. The smell of food signals GI motility. Message travels through the interneurons to the enteric nervous system. Signal is sent to the cephalic brain, or stimulation of smooth muscles. So the only one that does not happen in the long reflex is the message travels through interneurons to the ENS. That one, as you recall, is the short neuron, or the short reflex. Which reflex has feed-forward reflexes? That one's going to be the long reflex, because remember, the feed-forward reflexes, those are the ones that are stimulated by sight or smell or even hearing food. Now, the last slide here is where does the long reflex start? Does it start in the stomach, in the cephalic brain, or with the eyes? And actually, that one's going to be D, all of the above, because The stomach will signal both the short and the long reflex, but the long reflex also starts in the cephalic brain and with the eyes. And then GI peptides are stimulated by what? Interneurons, secretory cells of the stomach and small intestine, smooth muscle stimulation, or the endocrine pancreas. So GI peptides actually stimulate the endocrine pancreas. They do not. They are not stimulated by it. Some of the smooth muscle stimulation is due to the peptides. The answer is secretory cells of the stomach and small intestine. Those are directly stimulated, or those directly stimulate GI peptides. I hope you learned a lot from my slideshow, and I thank you for watching it.